Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So lately I have been really wanting to make a full-blown all pink outfit. I'm not normally much of a pink person, but I've just been wanting to make a full pink outfit. So that's what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna be making a gown and a jacket to go with it. And I'm also gonna be getting a blonde wig. So we're gonna do the full-blown Barbie fantasy, which I'm super excited about. So let's get into it. Also, my apologies, my voice sounds horrible. I'm currently battling some pretty intense allergies, so bear with me, y'all. All right, so to get this party started, I'm gonna do the jacket first, just because I think it's gonna be a little bit more complicated than the dress. And I'm gonna be using this Quick Sew K3764 pattern. So it's gonna be this one right here. It's kind of like a moto jacket. And then I have this absolutely amazing hot pink metallic vinyl that I'm gonna be using for the actual fabric. And it came to me in this absolutely humongous roll. So this will be super interesting to work with. I think that between the material and the pattern, it's gonna be a really challenging project, but I've been trying really hard to do things that are a little bit more challenging, because that's how I personally learn, is just by trying something. It may be a huge fail, but at least I tried and I learned something from it. So that's gonna be my very first step that I'm gonna do, is doing the jacket, and then I'll do the dress after. So let's go ahead and get this prepped and then we can sew. All right, so it is the next day. The prep took quite a while to do, so I have all of my pieces cut out here. If I could give you any tips about working with this particular fabric, I would say that it is definitely a hand workout. And then I don't have weights for putting my pattern pieces on to hold the pattern pieces, so I did have to use pins, but you do have to be super careful with the pins, because once you stab this fabric, there's gonna be a hole in it forever. So because the pins show up so well, I try to stay as close to the edge of the pattern pieces as possible, hoping that that's gonna get taken into the seam allowance and you won't see it. But now I'm wondering how I'm gonna keep these pieces together while I'm sewing. So that'll be an interesting challenge. I'll let y'all know how that goes. But I am going to start putting this together. So I will be binging Real Housewives of OC and sewing this. I'll just be following the directions that came in the pattern. If anything is weird or different, or if I have any tips as I go along, I'll let y'all know. But I'm gonna just start sewing and we'll see how this goes. Two of the biggest steps to kick off this project were to put the front and the back of the jacket together, which included putting in the zippers and adding the pockets, which are a welt style pocket. That means that to make this kind of pocket, you would sew the inside lining of the pocket to the front of the jacket, and then you carefully cut an opening and fold that lining to the inside of the jacket, and then top stitch the opening to finish it. All right, so it is day 2 of sewing. This is how far I was able to make it yesterday. So roughly like a vest, but with open sides. Nothing's been too difficult so far. I would say the hardest part of it was the front pocket. That was the most difficult part so far, but it's really not that bad. I've done it before. It just takes a bit of patience. So I'm gonna keep sewing this. I'll check in with y'all as the process goes. This jacket has a ton of little details. So once I start getting down to the real nitty gritty, I'll check in with y'all and let y'all know how that goes. Oh, and before I move on, I do wanna let y'all know that this fabric has been pretty easy to work with, but I do want to just let y'all know that I have a heavy duty machine. So it hasn't been difficult for me to work with, but my machine is a little bit stronger than your standard machine would be. So definitely if you wanna tackle something like this with this vinyl fabric, I would 100% recommend a thicker needle. I feel like a regular size needle would potentially break sewing this. So it's been okay for me, but I just have a different kind of machine. So just wanted to let y'all know, I'm gonna keep working on this. See y'all in a bit. Next up, I added the collar. Now this is where things started to get a little bit trickier. The vinyl fabric is so thick that it was really hard to get it to curve the way I needed it to when I was pinning it to the jacket, and especially because this is the first spot where I encountered 3 layers of the vinyl, which was definitely a lot tougher than just 2. This definitely required a little bit more elbow grease to get through the machine, so patience is key with this fabric. After the collar was attached, I sewed on the front facing, which just gives the front edges of the jacket its finished edges. I had to make sure I put plenty of notches in the seam allowance and trim them down as close to the edge as possible to make flipping this right side out easier for myself. And then once the facing was flipped, I top stitched around the entire outside edge, including the collar of the jacket. Next, I prepped the sleeves by adding in the zippers, which followed a very similar process to the welt pockets that are on the front of the jacket. All right, so I have been sewing along here. I've got the collar on, this little facing for the inside of the lapel is on, and then these sleeves have been prepped with the zipper. And these have a dart on the elbow, so I added that as well. So these are gonna be the next thing to go in. I was getting a little bit nervous about how these sleeves were gonna go in just because this fabric is so stiff. And this vinyl, surprisingly, is super sticky. It sticks to itself really badly, which is making things a little bit more difficult, and I wasn't anticipating that at all. So I was getting nervous about how these sleeves were going to go in, but you actually sew the sleeves in while the sides of the jacket are still open, which is really good because I don't know how this would go otherwise. So next step is going to be sleeves. And then once the sleeves go on, I do a huge seam from the wrist all the way down to the bottom. That closes the whole jacket. And then there's a waistband that's got to go into the bottom. The epaulets will be added. And I'm pretty sure that's it. So we're getting super close to the end here. This project hasn't been really that bad. The hardest part is definitely the fabric. It is a really tough fabric to work with. But the pattern so far hasn't been too difficult to navigate, and it's been a pretty simple construction so far. So I'm going to keep going along, and then I will let y'all know how this looks when it's finished. I ran into the same issues with these sleeves that I did with the collar. The fabric is just so insanely stiff, and it made it a lot harder to follow the curve of the arm opening. And this was the step in the project that was by far the most difficult to sew. It was a legit battle getting it through the machine. And there's supposed to be a top stitch along the top of the shoulder, but it just wasn't possible given how stiff and thick that part of the jacket is, and my machine just wasn't having it. Ow! Oh my God. Oh crap. Okay. My arms are legitimately sore after putting those sleeves on. That was like wrestling. Wow, that was very unenjoyable. I'm glad it's over. After the sleeves went on and the jacket was closed, I added the waistband, which was added by sewing right sides together at the bottom edge and then flipping it right sides out and sewing it closed. Last but certainly not least, I made the epaulets by sewing the pieces right sides together and trimming away all the excess seam allowance. Now, P.S., this is the most important part. Any excess seam allowance will make flipping it right sides out very difficult. And these were pretty hard to sew on too because there were just so many layers on the shoulder at this point in the project. And then to make sure they actually close, I hammered on some snaps by following the instructions on the packet, and these were really surprisingly very easy to add. Jacket is officially done. This project took so much longer than I anticipated for it to. This fabric is a lot tougher. Well, I mean, I knew it was gonna be tough to work with, but I just wasn't anticipating how tough it was gonna be to get it through the machine. And then another thing that I didn't think about is once the jacket actually started coming together, it was pretty much starting to get impossible to actually put it through the machine. But here we are, it's finished. Let's do the crinkle test, see how crinkly this is. Okay, I mean, it's a little bit crinkly, it's not horrible. So now that the jacket is finished, finally, we can move on to the dress. So that's gonna be our next step. Stop, bud, stop. You're gonna rock the camera. Lord Jesus. I love you, but get out of here. All right, so it's a new day, time to start working on this gown. So this is gonna be a really easy, pattern-free way to make a full gown. I have done this before, but I learned a lot of lessons the last time, so this is gonna be hopefully better than the last time I did this. So I'll be using some 4-way stretch hot pink sparkly fabric for the main body of it, and then I have not one but 2 different types of tulle to make the skirt. So I've got like an overlay like glittery tulle, and then I have just regular hot pink tulle to go underneath it. So I'm really excited to see how this is going to turn out. I'm going to be making the skirt much fuller than the last time I did this, and then I think I've just learned a better way to do the top. I know this is a really easy and effective way to make a gown pretty quickly, and you don't have to have a pattern whatsoever, which is always my favorite kind. I love to just be able to go and make something quickly. So I'm going to try to finish this whole dress in one day. We're gonna see if that happens, but that is my goal. So I think if I focus, I can do it, but we'll see. To start making this dress, I laid out my fabric and marked out how big I needed my pieces to be, and because I wanted to ruche this dress, I knew I needed the length to be twice the length of my torso, so that when it was ruched, it would be the correct length. And to get the measurements for how wide I needed the pieces to be, I took my body measurements and removed 15% from them, and then just rounded up to the nearest inch to add a little seam allowance. And so I will show you all my math to show you how I got these measurements. Once all the measurements were marked out, I cut out my pieces and then marked the 2 lines that I wanted the elastic to follow. Now, quick tip, the last time I did this, I didn't make these markings and the elastic went a little haywire and didn't end up looking very neat. So I do recommend making markings to follow, but after trying the dress on, I would recommend making these lines curve in at the waist just to further define the hourglass shape. To start making the bodice, I basted both outside edges with a straight stitch. I then carefully sewed the elastic to the lines that I drew by pulling the elastic as tight as possible and then sewing it with a zigzag stitch. Pulling the elastic tight is what ends up giving the fabric the ruching, and the zigzag stitch helps maintain the fabric stretchiness and gives the scene a really nice look to them. Once the elastic strips were sewn in, I gathered the raw edges to be the same length as the rest of the bodice, and then once the bodice was sufficiently ruched, I put the front and back together using an invisible zipper on one side and a zigzag stitch on the other. To make the skirt, I used about 15 yards of tulle, and I cut them into 3-yard sections, as 3 yards was roughly 3 times the length of the bottom edge of the bodice. And then to save time, I did a basting stitch along the folded edge of the fabric so that for each piece that I gathered, it was 2 layers. Okay guys, I wanted to check in real quick because the skirt is pretty much finished. It's about to go on, but I am a little bit torn because I have 2 different kinds of fabric for this. I have the regular tulle and then the tulle with the glitter in it. And I just got a little bit of that to go over the top just to give the skirt a little bit of something. But now that the regular tulle skirt is finished, I don't even think I want to include this glittery one. And like the fabric on the bodice is already like, it's super shiny. So I don't really know what to do. I did a poll on my Instagram, but I haven't really gotten a consensus there yet. I just posted that, but let me show y'all what this looks like, and then I'm gonna have to just make a decision, which, you know, I guess I could always add the glitter topper later if I really wanted it. I don't know. My gut is telling me just to do the regular tulle skirt, but then I'm like, what if it's too boring? So let me show you what these look like. So we've got the fabric for the top is this. And then the regular tulle is just this really pretty berry fuchsia color. And then this is the glittery tulle that I got to go over the top. And it's very beautiful, don't get me wrong, it's really pretty, but it's got like glitter comes off on your fingers, which is not ideal. And I don't know, this is just so pretty. I don't even really know that it needs anything else. And again, just this is already so shiny. It's like, would it be better to just do the super shiny with the matte? Or would it be better with the glitter? I really don't know. So I guess I'm gonna have to give it a think and then decide, but I just wanted to check in and let y'all know where I'm at. After noodling over this decision for far longer than I should have, I followed my gut and stuck with the regular tulle skirt. So to attach it, I stacked all of my layers of tulle together and then pinned them to the bottom of the skirt and sewed them on with a zigzag stitch. Once the skirt was on, I quickly finished the top of the dress by folding over about a 1/2 inch of the top of the fabric and sewing it in place with a zigzag stitch.
My last step was making some straps, so I used a little bit of the scraps that were left and made them as straight and even as I possibly could, and then I sewed them into a tube with right sides together. Next I turned them right sides out and top stitched around the whole edge of the strap and sewed them on right at the side seams to set them a little bit wider.
Okay, so the jacket and the dress both are officially finished, so the only thing we have left is the big reveal. So before we get there, I just want to thank y'all so much for watching this video. I hope that y'all enjoyed it and that it hopefully gave you some new tips and tricks, or at least like inspired you to try something kind of out of your comfort zone. Like I said, pink isn't normally really my color, but I've just been dying to make a full pink outfit, and I think that this was a huge success. So thank y'all so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you'd like. I do make videos like this pretty regularly. If you decide to make something like this, I would absolutely love to see the final results. So do not forget to tag me on Instagram. I'd love to see any creations that you make that are inspired by anything that I make here on my channel. So enjoy the big reveal, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye. Thank you.